Today's guest on the show is Dan Flynn. Dan is the Chief Revenue Officer for Barnum Financial Group. He is constantly looking for opportunities to expand relationships and align Barnum's resources to drive growth. We're going to talk today with Dan about his career in the industry, his experience working with advisors, and what he has learned from those relationships. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right, Dan Flynn, welcome to the show, bud. I'm so happy to have you here in the flesh in Shelton, Connecticut. So nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here, and certainly been a joy this last almost year now being part of Barnum. It's just been amazing. So really grateful.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad I probably chased you around for a little while, but let's talk about that, though. I remember meeting you when you're a young man coming into the financial service business 20 plus years ago. And if I remember correctly, you started out on a boutique broker dealer, and then you came on at MetLife to work on the broker dealer side. And how did you find the financial service industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's great reflecting on this. Number one, my father was an insurance agent, so I was kind of exposed in that world. I was always good and interested in numbers and kind of business and things like that. So, but I swore up and down I would never go in the insurance space. So I, of course, had to be a stockbroker and get into the investment world. So that's the path I went down. And it was just so ironic how I ended up, and we worked together at MetLife as they were building out the investment business. And it really just gave me a whole different view of the industry, what advisors do to help clients, certainly that intro to holistic planning of knowing the investment space and then joining an insurance-based firm. You know, it was just a really great experience to get to learn the investment business, being at a wirehouse and independent BD, but then really coming in and getting that holistic view was just a great experience for me.
Now, back up for 1 second. Were you a broker?
No.
Oh, okay. When you said that, I was like, I didn't even know that about you.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story because that was my path. And for, many of your listeners would have seen different movies that might have depicted firms that would look for college students that were ambitious.
Yes.
And wanted to make a ton of money. So I was
quick too.
I was heading down that path. And fortunately, as I was studying, getting my Series 7, I was reading the Wall Street Journal, of course, and this firm, to be nameless, is coming up in the news quite a bit. And I'm like, oh, that's not a good idea. So I pulled the plug.
So you were going to do that.
I was going down that path, and I ended up saying, all right, let me regroup here and learn a little bit more about this industry. So I joined a wirehouse and then got recruited to an independent BD. But it really is interesting because I really found that I enjoyed supporting advisors from the get-go. And I think that's, I've had stints of working with clients, but really that support of advisors is really what clicked for me from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that the one thing I saw in your career was exactly what you just said, was you always, home offices get a bad name sometimes because they're not in the field. But I've worked with a lot of home office executives like yourself that understood what the field did. And what I was attracted to about you early on was what you just said, is that you worked with advisors, but for advisors. And you've had a lot of different roles coming up to today. I want to understand that because I think that you can give a different perspective to our listeners, that a lot of financial advisors listening, a lot of entrepreneurs, and we were able to leverage a lot of things that you were building in your all your different roles that you've had. So why don't you take us through the journey?
Yeah, sure. So, when I really think about the fundamental of what I like to do and over the course of my career have become good at is finding the win-win. I think sometimes when you think about whether it's sitting in the home office or sitting in the field, it's easy to find the contradiction, or they want us to do this, or why aren't they doing that? I've been part of so many of that conversations, always having kind of one foot in each. And to me, there's always where's the win-win between what the company's trying to accomplish, what the advisors are trying to accomplish, and most importantly, what's in it for the client? And so I just feel like that's enabled me my affinity for advisors, my appreciation for what they do, my ability to build relationships with them and get to understand what makes them tick, and then be able to, find ways that intersects with what's good for, the company or aligns to the strategy or whatever it is. So that's, as you know, I came into MetLife at a time where our CEO was, focused on how do we get into the wealth management business. So that was opportune time. And so again, I think that ability to come in and connect with those advisors that were playing in that space and see what the obstacles were, and then be able to influence and work within the, confines of the kind of corporate space to be able to make progress. And I think that's what, over time you build that credibility, right? Of like, okay, I'm listening to you, I'm an advocate, but it's also got to be balanced, as you know. It can't just be, give everybody everything they want, but it's about back to finding that win-win.
Yeah. And I think one of the points you made there for the listeners on that are newer to the industry, if you always think about the end user, the client first, you'll make way better decisions and you'll think very differently about the business. And I think I always have a saying that everyone has to leave the table a little happy and a little sad. And when you say juggling that, that's a hard thing that you did for a long time. So what was some of the other roles you had besides you helped launch wealth management? I know at some point you went into teaming, you did some stuff in succession planning.
Yeah. And they really, fortunately, that was a great time to, be in that space, a great company, a lot of great things going on, as you know. And so, the success of that and the momentum of that really, I think, at all points in my career, I think every one of my opportunities came out of these inflection points of change. Sometimes where there was tons of opportunity, other times where there was, things happening maybe that weren't as fun. But I think in this case, it was a lot of success. And now we had advisors who were building these bigger businesses. They didn't have any business acumen or practice management expertise. And that became a big, risk, if you will, but also, again, a lot of upside in that. So that really had me, again, get more of that affinity. It was like I was moving from, I was, wealth management, portfolio management, the numbers, the spreadsheets, then getting into, wow, holistic planning. But then it really got to, man, if we can help advisors build better businesses, then what's the impact of that to the end client, to those advisors, to their staff, to the company?
And I think it's really interesting. I think the word entrepreneur gets thrown around a lot, and there's a lot of financial advisors that are entrepreneurial, but I think that if they can make this shift from being a financial advisor to running a business, is how their clients benefit and they benefit dramatically. And I think you did a good job of putting some of that stuff in there. So if you're sitting here now looking backwards, what are 3 or 4 of the main things that a financial advisor would want to see them do? And maybe it's different today because you have a different perspective than you did, 15 years ago. But what are some of those things that they would have to do to take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think it really gets down to that fundamental recognizing and creating time and space to work on the business as well as in the business. And, and I see this when leading teams or, anywhere in anyone's career progression. It's kind of the adage, what got you here won't get you there. And so, early on, what separates advisors tends to be, their sales skills, their portfolio management, their whatever that may be, that is their expertise in their craft. But then there becomes, I know you use the term a lot, that ceiling of complexity, that inflection point in their practice where they just can't be the, do it all. And so, I remember early on doing some panels and practice management interviews and things like that. And the thing that really kept resonating when you'd ask, what would you do over again? It's invest in bringing other people into your practice earlier. Always. No one's ever said, oh man, I hired that person too early, right? Have you ever heard too late? For sure, right? So really thinking about, again, stepping out. It's also an element of self-awareness. And I think that's what I love about Barnum, where you've given advisors that ability to, build an incredible enterprise or leverage experts within the organization, right? Because so number one is a little bit of that self-awareness, and then putting the time and energy to say, all right, how do I build this business? Where do I want it to go? And let me make sure I'm surrounding myself with the right resources and support to build something, because otherwise it's just going to come in on you. And I think honestly, just to take it back, I think as I reflect back on it, where my father was he was just selling stuff, right? And a hamster wheel forever. The pressure of that with more and more clients. And listen, honestly, that came home. And I think that, really drives me too, where, if advisors can build the right business around them and marry that with their craft, the benefits to that to everyone is just, incredible.
Well, there's 2 points, right? Like your dad maybe didn't have coaching and know what to do. So you as an outsider looking in, sometimes you learn from people that are close to you or mentors or people you work with, things to do and things not to do, right? So that was a big one. But to your point earlier, on the infrastructure as a team or as a business, I always say that you can't get crushed by the weight of your own business. So if you don't bring those people on, early and at the right time, I think that's a huge challenge. And then you get crushed by your own success. It's funny, you use the working in the business versus on the business. And I literally 30 minutes ago, I was on the phone with someone that I'm coaching, and we have a call in 7 days from now. And he said, what should I be prepared with? And I said, well, you have to focus on having a great finish, but we're going to cheat now. We're going to spend the next 90 days getting as many things in place for 24 that we can grow by 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever percentage you want to. And I said, we're going to be doing a combo in these 90 days. We're going to work in it and on it. And he goes, oh, that's great. And I'm like, that's something that you try to teach. But if you don't take that step back, which you had a major advantage because you're seeing lots of practices and you're able to give that advice to them.
Yeah. And I think it really does start with creating the structure to work on the business, because absent the structure, the in the business will eat that all day, every day.
But go deeper on what do you mean by the structure?
So I think if I think about even for myself, right, of like, okay, what are things that I need to do that are more strategic in nature, longer term? I need to fundamentally put time aside to work on those things, right? So that's number one. Like, okay, if you are working in a team, do you have a weekly meeting where you're meeting with and a structured agenda where people are prepared? Do you have, a monthly business review? Do you have a quarterly offsite? Do you have an annual planning meeting? Things like that, where now you set up the year, you set up your calendar, you put the right resources, hence this, advisor you're coaching reached out, I'm sure, and, asked or got some support, some help. So surrounding yourself with the right people, putting the right structure in place. Now you just have to show up and do what you do. And obviously you have to prioritize it. And I've done that before where advisors say, oh yeah, I want to grow. Can you help me? Sure. Put time in the calendar. Can't meet this week, have a client appointment, right? I mean, all of those things get very easy to get in the way. So it's, making the commitment, prioritize, putting the time on your calendar, and then, surrounding yourself with the right people. There's plenty of, you don't have to have the burden of doing it all yourself, as you know.
Yeah. For all the listeners now, we're probably, if you're driving and listening or you're on the treadmill or something, we're about 15 minutes in, go rewind that. He gave like 5 things that you could do automatically in your practice, from the meeting structure and the accountability and being prepared and all those things. If you do those things, you will probably be better than 90% of the advisors out there. So stop and go back, rewind that and write it down if you're not sitting there where you can write this down now. So thank you for that, Dan. Let's switch gears a little bit. So you're doing all this work with advisors and you're trying to help them to do better, build bigger businesses and help the end users. Was there obstacles that you hit along the way that, you can tell them stuff that they just didn't execute? Or was there things that you had to do differently to coach them to get them to understand what was next for them?
Yeah, I think really that coaching skill, going from, again, being even my own journey, right? Being a subject matter expert that people went to around investments or things like that, to even then being able to manage people. But to me, what really unlocked my ability to have an impact came with developing coaching skills and really helping advisors get underneath their why. And again, I think that was different than a lot of people were differentiated me than others that would come in from the home office, was all about what the company wanted them to do versus getting to understand what they wanted to do. Whenever we would work with an advisor or team, it started with, what's your vision? What do you want out of this, right? Not everybody wants the same thing out of their practice. Not everybody wants the same thing for their clients. So if you can help, develop a compelling vision for people, now when it gets hard, now when, oh man, I got all this stuff to do, there's the motivation, inspiration to really stay after the grind that is building a business over many, many years, as more than anyone.
Yeah. And I think that's great, because if you can see the vision and it's there, and I could just think of myself, my vision for my first 5 years is obviously different than my 30th year, but you keep moving that needle if you have something that's clear and something to go for. And obviously every day, I always try to teach, never get too high, never get too low, because each day you could have 3 wins in the morning and 4 losses in the afternoon, and you got to keep battling back. And, I think that, I heard this the other day, but I said it, as a baseball player, you fail more than you succeed. And, you still got to go back in the field and play and maybe get up again in another inning. So I think that's important that you take those things into business. So really great stuff, Dan. When you think of your personal journey working with advisors and helping them build practices, is there a point when you feel like this is like, I'm here and this is what I love, and I've taken all these skills and I've applied them? Where is that?
Well, I think for me, and again, as making this move to Barnum in the last year, was more, I've changed companies before, I've changed jobs plenty of times, but this was a real different experience. And I think one that, honestly, I think kind of the universe presented to me based on, where I was in my life and my career and what I was putting out in the universe in terms of, really just being able to, as you know and describe, like having it as much of an impact as possible. And I think, that gets harder and harder, and you are further away as you're sitting in, kind of the corporate space. So to get more hands-on has just been, such a delight. But I think it really is now at a point where I know what I'm good at. I can put that to use in the right ways. And I can really, I think all of those experiences really help me to, transfer some of that knowledge, experience, not just to advisors, but to all those I work with. And, that's really exciting here, especially given, the culture at Barnum, the growth mindset that's just instilled. I mean, I just find it to be such fertile ground to have an impact, again, not just on advisors, but on the lives of the people around me.
Well, and and thank you for saying that. And I think, what's interesting is if you look at our world today, it's getting more and more specialized. And for someone like you to be able to reflect on a 20 plus year career, take all those skills that you've gained and be able to use them in a more specialized role and impact more people. That's kind of why we do this. And I think it's interesting. I was really glad what you said earlier, because you are further removed when you're in the home office, but you're still thinking about the end user, meaning the client. And now you have a bigger impact on that. And I think that makes it really more fun and more impactful for you to do that in your career.
Yeah. And I do think too, there's the entrepreneurial culture and spirit. I'm pretty passionate about this industry, and I'm also get excited about where it's going and, different strategies and things like that. And I think the ability for us here at Barnum, and again, when you talk about bringing my experiences and skills, it's like, okay, where can I have the most impact? Well, certainly, this being more entrepreneurial, but it's also alignment to the vision and how you see things and where advisors are heading, and this ability to really, be holistic with clients, bring all these different specializations and talent to the table to serve clients in a way that I think is inevitable for all advisors, and I think there's a lot of advisors that get complacent with whatever it is they do day in and day out, and they're not really dialed into how the client's needs and demands are changing over time. And I think that's one that's, to me, exciting. It's like, I enjoy the grind. I don't see any time I'm not looking to like kick back. I like grinding it out on hard stuff. And to me, setting this firm up for the next level and the future and staying ahead of where everybody else is. That's to me what gets me fired up and has me excited about this opportunity.
Well, that's really amazing. And you took me right where I was going next. I was going to go to the industry. So what do you see the industry going? And what do you think, if I'm a new advisor coming in today, or I'm a veteran, what am I looking ahead at?
Well, I think, again, fundamentally starting with the client, right? And I think about when I first came in, around the same time as you, it was all about selling things. Even think about the stockbroker world. Like, you had to go to someone just to buy something. And this kind of financial planning coming into, the mainstream. But really, to me, it's all about clients wanting education, support, collaboration. I mean, even throughout kind of this term life coach, like, that's what I've really experienced both in this industry, but even as a client. It's not just all about numbers and spreadsheets, behavioral, emotional, all of those things. So to me, the EQ of the advisor is becoming more and more prominent, even surpassing the IQ of the advisor, right? Competence will always be crucial. But I do think, fundamentally, you're going to have two things. One is the demands and needs of the client in terms of, that emotional connection and trust. And number two, their expectations in terms of service and experience, right? Which has technology become more and more and more prominent in an advisor practice. You've got to be able to deliver good experiences. So to me, those are the two things that are going to drive everything. And I think advisors that set themselves up, again, with a planning approach, with getting to understand the clients better, with being able to either directly as part of their practice or as, resources they can marshal to solve as many needs, if not all needs possible. Those are the people that are going to come out on top.
Yeah, I it's interesting. I want to dig in a little on technology. I always say you have to be digitally enabled, advisor assisted, because I don't think all clients, maybe 4 or 5% of our industry, will be able to buy, online or through some distribution channel that's not face-to-face or digitally enabled, advisor assisted. But there's a buzzword that goes around forever when you think of technology. It's scale. And how have you seen that impacting some of the stuff you're doing and the coaching that you're doing? And, what have you seen through the years with that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons and value I can bring to Barnum, of appreciating the culture, maintaining the entrepreneurial spirit, the, speed to execution, but also bringing scale, given, how much this business is growing, given the vision we have for the business. And so to me, scale is critical in any business, but it's also the balance of scale playing the wrong role and therefore, minimizing whatever that may be, client experience, culture, right? It can certainly come in way too much on the other side. So I think if advisors think about scaling your practice, one of the things fundamentally I know you subscribe to is kind of the concept of unique ability. So it goes back to that self-awareness. And the more you can have people playing in their unique ability and doing that as often as possible, that in itself is an element of scale, right? So meaning surrounding yourself with people that complement your skill sets. Number two, operating a business, whether you're one advisor, a team of 10, a larger firm, whatever it is, you have to have repeatable processes. And the more that those are automated and digitally enabled, which also allows you to leverage data to make improvements and make decisions and make investments. Again, to me, now you're getting into that, top 1 percentile, right? Versus just the advisor who comes in and manages money and, does that pretty good. Yeah. So to me, that's the definition of scale at an advisor level for sure.
Well, and I think that, it's a lot of talk out there in the industry, but the advisors have to take the time to gain those skill sets, to embrace the technology and then build on it and go. Scale is a big buzzword and it's been for a while, but there's one that, is much newer. I love when you talk about data, right? But I think that how do you think I like to use the word curious. And I think if advisors stay really curious and if they don't, then they're not digging deeper, right? And data helps you do that. You talked about, their emotional IQ, but that word curious, do you see advisors staying that way or do you see advisors just like, I got to just drive through this? So talk about that.
Yeah, it's like if you were to actually, now that I think about it, you could put together like, this profile of what really separates, right? And I think to me, the opposite of curious is complacent.
Fair.
And I see advisors that, they just live for complacency, right? I mean, it's, and I guess it also does go back to starting with self-awareness and vision, because I show up with many advisors and they're not looking to change much and they're not looking to work harder, right? But back to the title here, right? Small steps, big win. If you can, back to coaching too, like, hey, what if we can tweak this and give you a little bit more time in your day? What if we could do this? Yep. So that's part of it too. I feel like coaching can help advisors be curious because many of them are either, wired in terms of their MO, or they're kind of just tired at change that's been imposed on them. I think we have to remember that too. We've been subject to that many times. And the home office has the new tool. Your broker dealer is requiring this. And I think there's a lot of change fatigue, which can squash the curiosity.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where coaching can really unlock it and saying, okay, let's be curious about something that's important to you or that can help you get what you want. And I think that's the, space for us to go.
Yeah. And it's interesting as you said the word, I like that curious versus complacent, but it made me start thinking, and you gave that example of the person that doesn't want to do the next thing and they're just complacent, is I wonder if that could have been avoided if someone was coaching them and they were building the right infrastructure and they weren't getting crushed by the way. Back to your dad, right? Could he have been off that hamster wheel if someone showed him? I don't know, like, I didn't know your dad, but if I knew your dad said my goal's here, way up here, and I got here, and then he never thought he can get there. But maybe if someone would have spurred that up, would he have gotten there?
No question. I think, again, it goes back to this natural path of the advisor's career where, the people that tend to show up in their world are the subject matter experts based on their specific craft, not people to show up to help them build a business. Right. I mean, again, to me, that's where it happens is all of a sudden they wake up and go, oh, man, as you say, the weight of what I've built here
Correct.
Is crushing me. And I've got, only a few paths here to take versus setting it up front. Right. Hey, invest. Don't spend all the money. Invest some money and be able to hire a staff or share a staff person. And, here's the steps you can take. No different than marketing or a new marketing strategy or implementing this product or cross-sell. To me, that's one of those things that's frankly been very absent in the industry to help advisors much earlier figure out how and what kind of business, and how to build it. And so to me, that's where, coaching, it doesn't, and again, go back to the old, management was telling advisors how to sell more, right? And to me, that's what changes back to this industry evolution. The more we as coaches can help advisors unlock the value and help them get excited about being more curious, figuring out different ways to do things, the client's going to win in that too.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think that, when the client wins, it's the whole game of what you're doing. So let's fast forward to today. So as I said in your opening, you're the chief revenue officer here. It's you have 25 people on your team that are, back to what you said, in their unique ability, helping FAs and the end users to be efficient, using data, using their sales skills and their product knowledge. What's next for you? And if I bring you back in 36 months from now, what are you going to tell me happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the fundamental is I love working with this team. It's kind of like, my passion and skill of working with advisors, building teams, all the same principles hold true. So I am just, loving that. And I'm seeing the multiplier on the impact I'm having here versus prior world is so reinforcing for me. But then I think it goes beyond that. And I really love the strategic thinking aspect of this business. It's always been, part of my career, being on the forefront of change and where are those opportunities and being able to sit around the table. But again, to be here and be able to bring that to the forefront much quicker, much more receptivity and transparent and challenging thinking, but then execute faster. So I'm excited now that I've got kind of this year under my belt of, almost look at this as like a financial planning process. Like, okay, I got the discovery, feel pretty good knowing where I am, where things are going, where I can add value. And to me now it's, all right, what big things can we bring to the table and continue to innovate at Barnum on this fertile ground that just, again, changes the industry, puts us further and further ahead of the competition. I think honestly, the hard part for me is trying to figure out how to narrow down the focus. I mean, my wheels are turning, man. I feel like I'm in this place. I just see opportunity all over the place. It's how do we harness that and really get on the, the road. And I do think there's elements of, taking this, understanding the industry and how do we solve industry problems in a bigger way.
Yeah. And give back to them.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a tip. The way you're going to solve this is small steps equals big wins.
Love it. Stacking them, baby.
That's it. Stack them up. And so listen, Dan, thank you so much for being on the show today. I picked up like 5 things here. If you're listening, go back and like re-listen because there's a lot of nuggets there that you gave us. It's always been a pleasure to work with you, but now work with you day to day. It's such a joy for me. And just watching you grow has been really fun. So thank you.
Yeah, same here. It's a pleasure. I just, as you always say, we're just getting started. And I think at this stage of my career, I love the fact that I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm being challenged every day and surrounded by just amazing people with just so much opportunity. It's incredible. So thank you.
Well, small steps, big wins. If you love the show today, make sure you share it with some friends and give us some reviews on Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening to it, or YouTube. And Dan, I appreciate you being on the show again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Every bit helps. You can also follow us on Instagram at Small Steps, Big Wins.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.